Dr. Mark Dailey here. Today we're going to wrap up our discussion about the gastrointestinal system. Up to this point we've talked about the enteric nervous system, which is found in the lining of your gut. The fact that it is like a second brain, the fact that the enteric nervous system has over 100 million neurons, which are more than the spinal cord itself. We also spoke about the interconnection between the two brains, if you will, and their dramatic effect on one another. We have just barely scratched the surface on this amazing system. We could go on, and it would surely glorify our Creator. I'm sure that those of you who are sick or know someone who is sick want to find out how the GI tract breaks down and what causes it to break down. If you want to stay healthy, or if you're sick with a chronic condition, which most of you are, that's why you're part of the program, this following information will be real important to you. Remember, the gut lining not only has to absorb nutrients, ushering them into the bloodstream, it has to keep foreign invaders from getting into the bloodstream. A healthy GI tract has very tight intercellular junctions to prevent the absorption of bacteria, food antigens, and other mid-sized and large molecular structures. During times of chronic inflammation or chronic stress, which increases cortisol production, the intestinal membrane may lose its tight junctions and allow the passage of antigens, which are bad guys, that are not small in molecular weight into the bloodstream. This may cause foods to be absorbed as polypeptides and proteins instead of the much smaller amino acids. This abnormal absorption will cause an inflammatory response to occur, which in turn will exacerbate and exaggerate the immune system. It throws the immune system oftentimes into high gear. This is very bad for those suffering from an autoimmune condition and can actually cause an autoimmune condition in some cases. It is really important for you to understand that inflammation is the enemy. I try to stress that. If your GI tract is inflamed, it cannot digest and break down food for nourishment, and it has trouble keeping out invaders. Moreover, as you'll soon see, it can affect your whole body. So, inflammation can be caused by a parasite, large food particles that have gotten in places where they were never meant to be can be perceived by your immune system as an antigen, which is a foreign invader. Bacteria like H. pylori, hypochlorhydria, yeast overgrowth, dysbiosis, all can cause gastrointestinal inflammation. Remember, dysbiosis is too many bad bacteria to good bacteria. The byproduct of these bacteria, even parasites, is often toxic. So in other words, they excrete a substance, a waste product, that creates toxicity in the human body, and in this case in the gastrointestinal system. Inflammation caused by gastrointestinal triggers have a serious impact on the risks associated with cardiovascular disease, chronic fatigue, neurodegeneration, inability to lose weight, mood, depression, megaloblastic anemia, thyroid function, and so much more. I'm going to mention a few conditions that could stem from GI dysfunction. How about anemia? Vitamin B12 has a complex physiological mechanism that is dependent upon optimal gastrointestinal health at many different levels. Gastrointestinal dysfunction may cause vitamin B12 deficiencies or anemia. It appears that optimal absorption of B12 is dependent upon adequate levels of hydrochloric acid, pancreatic enzymes, and a healthy brush border in the gastrointestinal tract. Consider mood and depression. Excuse me. Gastrointestinal dysfunction can have a dramatic impact on mood due to its influence on neurotransmitter synthesis. and glucose absorption. It should be noted that the enteric nervous system is responsible for producing, according to many, 99% of the body's serotonin levels. And serotonin can be considered the happy neurotransmitter perhaps, and it's also a signaling neurotransmitter, which means it tells some of the other neurotransmitters what to do and where to go. The brain is responsible, your upper brain, for only 1% of total serotonin production. In addition, glycemic levels can be impacted if there is abnormal glucose absorption in the gastrointestinal tract. This can cause spikes of high and low glucose levels, and it could have an impact on mood and behavior. Then again, let's consider inability to lose weight. GI inflammation can disrupt interest cells in the cellular communication and make weight loss extremely difficult. GI inflammation has the potential to inhibit the breakdown of stored fat. Inflammatory cytokines have been shown to encourage the liver to release more fat and sugar into the bloodstream, which encourages the body to go into lipogenesis and store body fat. This may explain why some people can exercise, be on a low-calorie diet, and still not lose weight. And then what about the cardiovascular connection? Inflammation caused by gastrointestinal triggers have a serious impact on the risks associated with cardiovascular disease. Numerous studies have demonstrated that the role C-reactive protein plays as a marker for cardiovascular disease. Now, C-reactive protein is a sensitive marker for systemic, which means system-wide inflammation, not just cardiovascular inflammation, and is elevated when the gastrointestinal system is inflamed. A study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that men with CRT values in the high bracket had 3 times the incidence of heart attack and 2 times the incidence of stroke. What about neurodegeneration? Neurodegeneration is interesting because it's breakdown or perhaps death of your brain cells. Gastroinflammation response will produce inflammatory cytokines that will travel to all regions of the body and initiate a global reaction, including the glial cells of the brain. Glial cells within the brain structure will also produce inflammatory cytokines and neurotoxic agents, which can damage neurons, which are brain cells, and cause cell death. It's been associated with conditions like or including Alzheimer's, Huntington's, multiple sclerosis, and as well as edema and seizures. Then chronic fatigue is something that we hear so much about today. GI dysfunction can have adverse impact on energy production in several different pathways. Anytime food, vitamins, and minerals are not absorbed, the entire body will be compromised. In addition to that, we know that dysfunction in the GI tract inhibits the conversion of the inactive form of T3, which is a thyroid hormone, to be converted to the active form of T3, which will affect energy production, leaving you chronically fatigued. We also know that it induces insulin resistance, which means that you can't get glucose into the cells for energy. It induces adrenal stress syndrome as well as hypoglycemia. It short-circuits the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain. It revs up the immune system and places the body in a chronic stress response. It has the potential of causing anemia, and as you probably remember, that the inability to get anemia is the inability to get oxygen into the cells, which is vital. You can't live without oxygen. That means you can breathe, but the oxygen isn't getting converted and transported by the cells. So as you can see, there really is almost no area that is not affected by a dysfunctioning gastrointestinal system. I think you can see that it would be easy for chronic disease to stem from an unhealthy gastrointestinal tract. And with what you've learned, how can your body function properly without a healthy gastrointestinal tract. Our GI system is under continuous assault by the way we live our lives right here in America, the food we eat and what we drink. The answer to the problem goes back to lifestyle and dietary changes. How do we get out of the miserable shape we're in? Well, that's what this program is all about. More coming up. Thanks so much for your time and attention. God bless you and have a great day.